Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills with mesh install video for the 2013 through 16 Toyota Venza. In this video, I'll show you how to make the grill shown here, including removing the bars and refinishing the edges. Since this is a lengthy install, instead of using the grill on the vehicle, I'm starting with a brand new grill. This middle bar is a funky shape. It's going to take a lot of work to make this whole grill look right, but I'll try and make this video as quick as possible. Let's start in on the back of the grill by flipping this around. There's a sizable gap on the back that I'll want to bridge before doing any cutting. I had some scrap mesh that's a tight pattern, which will be great for a brace. Then I can use some tape to hold it in place for the upcoming step of bonding the brace to the frame. To do that, I'll use Pliogrip Plastic Repair number 3, though other brands such as 3M make similar products. Start by dispensing some of the Pliogrip as far back as you can and then work your way up to the sides. After you have some laid down, then use a small brush to even out the application and then wait for this to cure. Repeat for the other side and then come back in about 30 to 40 minutes to peel off the tape. I like adding a little bit more of this repair material to the back for extra support. So add a thin layer here and then use a Bondo spreader to flatten out the Pliogrip to be a nice smooth surface. Let this cure yet again, and now I'll use an open-ended handsaw to start cutting out the center. And this will make short work of those thin vertical connecting bars. Cut them all out, and then let's move on to the big bar in the center. This cut will need to be done at an angle similar to the angle of the mesh that we bridged on the back, and preferably a little bit away from the edge. We can always cut or sand more later. It's important though not to cut off as much early on because it will be challenging to rebuild that later if we take off too much. Once we cut all the way through, then lift out the center and throw it away. Let's get a grinder out and equip it with a coarse grit disc to start sanding away the bulk of the side edge excess. This is also going to be the start of the shaping or carving process too. It's probably safe to just eyeball where you want the stopping point to be for now, but once you get it to where you feel it's close, then lay down a tape line on the far sides. This is done just to make sure you don't over sand too far. As you can see here, I was also sanding at an angle that matched both the stock side angle and the angle of the mesh that we bonded on the back. Once you've sanded up to the edge that you want to keep, then take the tape off and let's look at the side profile. There's a gap in the center and we're going to be filling that in so that the side bar will appear all solid when finished. Let's prep the surrounding area by sanding down the paint and take it all the way down to bare plastic. Getting in the small gap can be as easy as folding up some sandpaper and making a few passes in the dipped area. We'll have some overlap on the inner edge, so scuffing that area up will be a good idea as well. Let's get out the Pliogrip again and start dispensing some on the inner edge and the front edge. Then grab a Bondo spreader and start evening out the material. There's going to be many opportunities to get this edge into the correct shape, but the sooner we get it right, then the fewer times we'll need to revisit this step. On the back of the grill, we're also going to want to add some more support. There's some vertical bars here along the top edge, and this is the perfect spot to add some more Pliogrip. The reason I went and added this support is because we're going to need to trim off part of this back edge. As it stands now, the top edge is very wavy, and to start fixing this, I'll grab some pinstriping tape. I'm simply laying down the tape on the back of the edge as far as it goes as long as it's on a solid area with no gaps. Come in with a Dremel equipped with a cutoff wheel to remove the excess behind the tape. We'll be left with a nice straight edge that'll be relatively even in depth. If you were to skip this step, then the mesh on the back would look like it has a lot of gaps and the vertical angle of the mesh would also be leaned back just a little too far. Now that we're done on the top edge, let's refocus back on these sides. Yet again, grind down the excess and shape the edge with a grinder until you start to get a smooth and straight edge that aligns with how the grill should look. I don't recommend applying too much pressure with the grinder here. Several light passes will get you better results than just a couple heavy passes. I'd say we're about halfway through and rebuilding this edge, and here's how mine looks right now. Overall, it's a good start, but it's also a big lumpy mess when you look up close. From here on out, we're not going to need to add in as much repair material, so let's clean up the back edge and sand that straight. Afterward, I'll make a few more passes on the side and front edge to refine that shape a little bit more to my liking. We're looking pretty good, but I still have a dip here on the front edge from not filling in as much as I should, and I'll add more to the side edge to patch in any small holes as well. This should probably be the last time we're using the Pliogrip, so let's make it count and get some good coverage. After I let this cure, I'll come back and give it one last rough sanding. Again, if you want to have some nice clean lines, using some tape is the best tool you can have. A final sanding up to the edge will have it nice and crisp. Then remove the tape and let's get to mixing up a small quantity of Bondo. Only move to this step when you have some finishing touches left. This isn't meant to be part of the structural end of things for this build. Dispense the Bondo on the areas we're working on and then use a spreader to get the edges looking relatively smooth. Mine doesn't look perfect here, and the more you have built up simply is just meaning the more that you'll need to sand down later. Next up, I'll be using a long sanding block wrapped with some 80 grit sandpaper, and let's get to work on knocking down this excess. 80 grit will be aggressive enough to quickly work past the initial layering that we just added. And I feel like the sanding block is an essential tool for getting straight and flat lines on a project like this. After quite a few passes, here's how mine looks. There's actually still a little bit of a dip on that front edge where there was a notch that we filled in, and that'll need to get worked out soon. Also, these round lower edges will take quite a bit of sanding with no block to get the curve just right. The top corners are the most challenging area to get in. I wrapped some sandpaper on a spreader and then just slid it up in the corner and then worked over the area. After this, I added another thin layer of Bondo and then used some 180 grit paper and then some 240 to get it nice and relatively smooth. Here's a quick shot of what mine looks like all sanded down and then hit up with some primer. It took several hours of filling, curing, and sanding to get to this point. If you want to do a flat black grill frame, the Spray Max 1K primer filler and then the matte black trim paint is the way to go. I'm going to be doing a 2-stage gloss black, and while we wait for that to dry, let me show you the mesh piece that I made for this build. This is the Perf GT mesh that we sell on our website. It's made from aluminum and finished off in a gloss black powder coat. To cut this to the correct shape and size, I started with a cardboard template and then transferred it to the mesh when I was happy with the fit. Let's turn our attention back to the frame now that the clear coat is hardened up, and wow, does this thing look slick. There's also a rubber seal that was added to the top edge so that we have it looking back to factory OEM fresh. The change to the frame is very drastic and our hard work is starting to pay off. I'm going to lay the frame face down. The mesh piece I made is intended to slip on the back of the grill like so, with some bent tabs facing forward and wrapping around the edges. Then I'll grab some cable ties and foam, which will be good for temporarily mounting the mesh to the frame. Use the foam on the front of the grill to protect the painted surface. Have the tie resting on the foam and then feed the tail end of the tie through the front of the mesh and fasten it to the head of the tie on the back of the mesh. We only need to have these as tight enough to hold the mesh flush to the back of the grill opening. No need to over tighten the ties to the point where they could distort the grill frame. Affix the mesh all the way around to ensure full coverage. I'm spacing my ties about 4 to 6 inches apart from each other, which seems to be working pretty well. Once you have it all tied up, check the front for any gaps and adjust anything accordingly, and then cut the tail ends of the ties off and throw them away. To bond the mesh and frame together, I'll again grab some Pliogrip, but other epoxies can be used. Start by dispensing the epoxy in and around the mesh on the back of the grill where the mesh is making contact with the grill frame. Afterward, come back to the area with a brush and spread the Pliogrip around to ensure full coverage. Of course, at this point, make sure not to spill any of this through the front. That would quickly destroy the fresh paint job and be hard to clean up. Keep repeating this application all the way around the mesh until it's fully covered. While the top and bottom have plenty of room for a fair amount of Pliogrip, the sides are a bit tighter of a squeeze. I have the mesh on the back about as skin tight as possible for the left and right sides, and I'm also being a little sparing with the bonding. Building it up too much in this spot can potentially cause reinstallation problems. We need to wait for this to cure one more time, and then after about 30 minutes, I came back and cut off the ties and removed the foam. Let's see how this one turned out, and oh my, look at this. What a stunning transformation this grill has gone through. This all black design looks so sleek compared to what we started with. Here's a couple of pictures from the owner after they installed it on their vehicle. When it comes to one-of-a-kind grills that I've made, this is one of them that I really don't think you'll see anyone else undertake. While this was a very challenging build, it was also very rewarding to see it installed in the end. If you decide to undertake a similar install on your vehicle, then I hope this video helped you. Well, that's all I have for this one. I hope you liked it, and if you can subscribe, that would really help out the channel, and thanks for watching.